Hello and welcome to Sticky from the Inside, the employee engagement podcast that looks at how to build stickier, competition-smashing, consistently successful organisations from the inside out. I'm your host, Andy Goram, and I'm on a mission to help more businesses turn the lights on behind the eyes of their employees, light the fires within them, and create tons more success for everyone. This podcast is for all those who believe that's something worth going after and would like a little help and guidance in achieving that. Each episode, we dive into the topics that can help create what I call stickier businesses. The sort of businesses where people thrive and love to work, and where more customers stay with you and recommend you to others because they love what you do and why you do it. So, if you want to take the tricky out of being sticky, listen on. Okay then, leadership is a topic we constantly cover and refer to on this podcast. Effective leadership is a key ingredient of becoming a stickier business. Of course it is. If our goal is to retain more of our top talent, keeping them fully engaged and continually pushing the business on to do even greater things, that is not going to be realised by unfit leadership. Oh, wow, Andy. What a cracking start to a podcast with an obvious statement like that, I hear you say. But just bear with me, guys. Bear with me. What makes for effective leadership today? And my use of the word today is entirely intentional. Is today's idea of what makes a great leader that different from the past? If it is that different, why is that? What's changed to make it that way? And why are the old ways no longer effective or appropriate? If I look back at some of the very best people I followed in my 30-odd year career, I think they were already doing a lot of the things that seem to have captured the leadership zeitgeist now. Were they just ahead of their time? Was I just lucky to work for them? Or were these things always important, just not common practice? It's so easy to say that we're living in unprecedented times right now, but it really does feel like we are. So today I wanted to speak with someone who has a very clear idea about why that is and the effect that that has on our ability to lead people successfully today and importantly into the future, and what may need to change and adapt as a result of that. So I'm delighted to be joined by Rajeev Kapur. He's the president and CEO of 1105 Media, a business focused on helping other businesses grow. But he's also the author of the book, Chase Greatness, Enlightened Leadership for the Next Generation of Disruption, which combines two things I love, leadership and disruption. So I'm looking forward to hearing Rajeev's take on all those questions in this introduction and more. Welcome to the show, Rajeev.
Thank you so much, my friend. Great to be here.
It's super to have you on here, my friend. I have listened and watched quite a few of your chats on this topic, so I'm looking forward to having it in full bore, one-on-one with you today. So I'm really excited by that. Before we get into this fabulous topic of leadership and disruption and changing times and all that malarkey, do me a favor, my friend, will you, for the listeners? Just give us a bit of a better background history of you, who you are, and what you're focused on today.
All right. Well, first of all, again, like I said, it's a true honor here to be with you. And I really hope that at the end of the 30 or 40 minutes that we're here together, that the listener really gets some really good take-home value. So that's really kind of the goal here today. So, my background is, I think, a fairly typical background. Brought up in Southern California, and that's where I'm calling in from right now, down in the Orange County area. And I was in the 80s with the start of the PC revolution, a little bit of a techno geek and nerd, and just started to kind of dabble my way around that. I ended up working for an old computer company called Gateway back in the early 90s.
Remember Gateway?
That?
Yeah.
And then from there, went to Dell for about 12 years and did all kinds of great things at Dell, and met some amazing people and great mentors, and led some amazing teams, and as well, that included running, parts of Dell China and South Asia, and helping to launch Dell India and all those kinds of things. So that was kind of cool. And then from there, after being an expat for 4+ years, we decided to move back to Southern California, and I was president of an IoT, Internet of Things e-commerce company for a while, and then CEO of an audio technology company that competed with Dolby. That was a lot of fun. And now today I'm CEO of 1105 Media, or as 1105 Media, as some would say. And nobody asked me what 1105 stands for because it's a long, long, long story. And so, but anyways, it doesn't matter. But 1105 is cool. It's a great company, amazing people, great support, and we do a great job of helping connect buyers with sellers in the technology space. But outside of that, during COVID, as you mentioned, I wrote the book, and I've been dabbling in writing some movie screenplays for fun and all
cool.
that. And so, yeah, and so starting to get more and more into the AI space, as well, with all this Chat GPT stuff out there. And so it's been a fun ride, and I've been very fortunate and lucky, and I'm glad I'm here today.
Oh, it's great to have you here today. Massive tech background, obviously, and look, it would be remiss of me, Rajeev, not to bring up something that we had a quick chat about previously, in that you are my first real life American Wrexham fan, right? I mean, the Wrexham thing over here it's been an amazing thing to watch, right? But you're the first person I spoke to overseas who's a genuine Wrexham fan. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the show came, is on TV here, on Hulu, which I guess over there is on Disney Plus, but it's on Hulu here. And I'm a big fan of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. It's like, and you see them what they're doing. You're like, all right, let me watch it. And so you hear some things about it, and I started watching it, and it was just amazing, falling in love. And the way they talked about the town and the people, and how it used to be such a bustling area over there in Wales, and the race course, I think, being the oldest football stadium, right, in the world, and everything. So
absolutely.
So anyway, so you just they did such a great job of talking about the people and the team and the history. It's like, how can you not? And you follow it along, and I'm not going to give any spoilers here, but so. But anyways, it was amazing, and the way they introduced the Welsh culture was a lot of fun. And so, how can you not fall in love with this like underdog story? And and then it was funny, and it was funny and emotional, and so. It's funny thing here is that a few weeks, we're also Manchester United fans. And so it's funny, a few weeks, so maybe about a month ago, they were showing both I think it was Manchester United versus Everton or somebody, and Wrexham was playing, and Wrexham had higher ratings in the US than, so I thought that was pretty funny. And so it's great to see how with they're following. And I'm really excited because in July, Wrexham and Manchester United are going to play a friendly in San Diego, California, and so we're going to go down and check it out. And so I'll finally be able to, get some Wrexham gear, and so that's good. But but over here, people are also in love with Ted Lasso.
Wow, I love that show. Love that show.
It's great, right? It's fantastic. So people, you get, I think more and more people get exposed, and it's interesting because you had the World Cup, Ted Lasso, and Wrexham kind of all happening. So hopefully that's juicing up the interest of the sport here in the U.S.
Yeah, let's hope so. And Lasso for sure, but maybe there's some links with what Rob and Ryan are doing in terms of their leadership style and the way that they're sort of behaving in some of the stuff that we'll end up covering today. I don't know, but I just think it's a fascinating story. And to finally speak to someone overseas who's riding the Wrexham train, I thought was fabulous and great and really interesting. Enough waffle from me. Let's get cracked on with the topic that we're going to talk about today. Let's begin simply. I mentioned in this intro that it feels like we're in some pretty crazy, unprecedented times right now. Do you think that's true? And if you do think that's true, Rajeev, why is it? What is this landscape that we're really facing into now?
Oh boy, let me tell you, my friend, I think we are literally one step into one of the biggest, massive global disruptions the world has ever faced. And it's really simple. I think if you look at it, you have a perfect storm brewing.
Mm-hmm.
You have kind of three major events happening over the course of the next 24 months. You have, number one is you have Gen Z and millennials will become the majority of the workforce around the world.
Mm.
And for the first time in the US, women will have a slight majority in the workforce.
Okay.
So you have that. And that requires a different type of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You have, and within that, you have people who really believe in diversity, equality, inclusion, and all those kinds of things, and which is terrific. I think some don't, but I think it's good. And so you have that. You have now, and I surmised this a little bit in my book, and I wrote this book before ChatGPT came out, obviously, but I did talk about massive disruption that was going to come from AI and IoT and robotics and all these things. And if you think about it, your laptop or your iPhone, there's more power in an iPhone today than there was the entire moon mission in the 60s.
Yeah,
right?
It's crazy.
And so in the course of the next 4 or 5 years, you're going to see computing power become so it could almost rival that of the human brain in terms of its processing power, right? And when that happens, you're going to see these AI models get smarter. Robotics going to become, you can see now, go and watch Boston Dynamics robots, right? You're going to get better and stronger and faster and smarter. You're going to see all kinds of new innovations that are coming. And all these, and whether it's through ChatGPT or Bard or whichever one's going to win out, I think there's going to be room for more than one. There might be only room for two. And I'd right now bet on Microsoft and Google. And Microsoft, for those who don't know, own 49% of OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And their aim is to put it in Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Teams,
just like
everywhere.
An assistant, right? Just, yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So, and it's interesting that they call it Copilot. And so it's like literally having an extra brain beside you while you're working or doing whatever you're trying to do. So you have this massive disruption that's on its way, and that's going to affect millions of jobs. And a lot of jobs are going to go away, but new jobs are going to be created. And there will always probably be a need for managers and those types of people. But managers are going to be replaced by people who know AI. And if you're not willing to learn this stuff, if you're not willing to learn about ChatGPT and Bard and all these different tools that are available that are starting to come out now, you need to. Yeah. And if I can give anybody a takeaway, you have to go learn this stuff. And then the third thing is you have some pretty interesting geopolitical issues happening, right? With Russia, Ukraine, some tensions with China. And I think Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger at the Berkshire Day, I think a week or two ago, said both sides are being stupid, and I tend to agree. And you just look at this and you realize just how interconnected the economies are, and what one false step could cause, a massive global depression. If things were to happen, go wrong. So you have all these things are happening, and I haven't even talked about climate change yet. But you have all these different things that are out there. And it's going to be really relying on the millennials and Gen Z to kind of really help solve the problem. And that's when I started writing the book. And I talked about how, for if the world stage is changing, the economy is changing, the climate is changing, you have all these things, technological advancements are changing the way we work. Leadership has to change too. And if leadership is unwilling to change, then I can guarantee you those companies won't be around. Yeah. So that's where we are.
Yeah, it's the fact, I guess, this is all happening at once, right? Because we've seen various bits of change over decades and years, but this feels like everything happening all at once.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and that's what's strange. We've been through industrial revolutions before.
Yeah,
and we're on the early stages of the fourth industrial revolution. So Industry 4.0 is on its way. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be more than just the AI things that I've mentioned here. It's going to be more than IoT and robotics. It's going to be such amazing advancements in life sciences, longevity, curing diseases, and so, there's going to be, self-driving cars, whatever it might be, right? So there's going to be some amazing, cool things that are coming out over the next, that at least my grandkids will get to appreciate and see, just how we were in awe, by things like the iPhone. Who knows what they're going to be in awe with, right? So all this stuff is happening, and we're on the early stages of the fourth industrial revolution. But I kind of look at this a little bit differently. I think what you're going to see here is, for the first time, you're going to see kind of a melding of a fourth industrial revolution and a new age of enlightenment, right? And an age of enlightenment, right, is when you see massive change also in art and sciences and music and all those things as well. And so that's what I think is going to happen. I think you're going to have both of those things kind of happening at once. So,
well, that's a great link, because your book, Chase Greatness, obviously talks about enlightened leadership, and we just talked about the renaissance that may be going on right now, right, to sort of boost this huge amount of learning and vision and all these sorts of things. So I'm really interested to hear your definition, your kind of the causal piece behind enlightened leadership, and how that may differ from popular, I guess, leadership mantras of the past, like servant leadership, all those sorts of things. What's the build? What's different? And yet, really, what is different to this enlightened leadership versus other things we might be more familiar with?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, servant leadership is probably the closest to enlightened leadership, right?
Yeah.
And servant leadership really kind of started in the 80s. Jack Welch was kind of like the pioneer of servant leadership, the former CEO of GE. And servant leadership, he got it from the church. It came from the church. And so, when you think about it, it's a great leadership, tool, right? What's wrong with, hey, I work for, as a CEO, I work for you. Like, Andy, I work for you.
Yeah.
What can I do to make your job easier? What can I do to help you? Well, what can I do to help you achieve your goals? What can I do to help reduce your workload? What can I do to help you take care of the customer? Right? What can I do? What tool do you need?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's where you kind of get that leadership lesson. You talked about Wrexham a little bit, and I think one of the things Rob and Ryan have done, which I believe is the number one rule of leadership, which is give people the tools to do their job, right, and then get out of their way.
Get out of their way, absolutely, yeah.
Right, and so I think that's ultimately what servant leadership says, right, which is, okay, here you go. Now, enlightened leadership takes all of that and says, Andy, not only am I here to help you be successful in the business, how can I help you be successful outside of the business? And for the first time, leadership is reaching outside the walls of the business, and it has to. Because of social media, because of remote work, because of the development of new technologies, you now have access to employees all over the world, and these employees now, you can see what they're doing, how they're thinking, how they're feeling. You can talk about whether mental wellness issues or whatever the case might be. It's now more prevalent than ever because of social media. You can see what's being posted and things of that nature, and so that's what essentially enlightened leadership is. And enlightened leadership says, look, yes, we're going to still focus on profitability and maximizing our value, but one of the best ways to do that is to retain our employees.
Yeah.
This is not just me, right? I think if you talk to McKinsey or Goldman or any of these guys, they will tell you that the more you can retain your employees and reduce your attrition rates, the more you'll put towards your bottom line.
Sure.
And a lot of times CEOs don't realize that. A lot of times CEOs just look at, oh, well, that person's gone, I'm going to save some money. Well, they don't understand the impact that has on the rest of the business. There's other stuff that might fall, or the brain drain that happens when someone leaves, right? Or if you lose a top salesperson, you have to probably hire 3 people to replace that one person to make up for the loss of productivity, or whatever the case might be. And so, a lot of people thought that, when outsourcing happened in a big way, oh my God, all these jobs are going to be going away. Well, certain jobs went away, but new jobs were created, and that's what's going to be happening now. And so I'm not super concerned about that. What I am concerned about are CEOs who are not recognizing that, and like I mentioned earlier, this new demographic that's coming up, they're much more aware of things like climate change and social justice, and I call it the JEDI, right? So there's justice, environment, diversity, and inclusion,
right?
So they are much more in tune with those kinds of things. And so, for example, at 11:05, a couple of years ago, we gave everybody. We made voting day here, the election day, November 7th or 8th, depending on the day of the calendar, an official company holiday. We gave everybody the day off to go vote.
Cool.
And the cynics have said, well, what if people vote by mail? It's like you're giving them a free day off, whatever. And I'm like, well, that's fine. I don't care if they vote by mail. I'm going to do my part. I'm going to take away that stress. I want them to feel like they can get involved and they can try to make a difference if they're not happy with the abortion ruling, if they're not happy with certain things. Then go vote. Or if you are happy with things, go vote. And so, I figured, it's my responsibility to do that. And if they voted by mail, then right, I encourage them to go get involved in their community. I I tell them to go be poll workers. And if they don't want to do that, I tell them just take a mental wellness day and go hang out with your kids or your family or your friends and go see a movie. But just take that day to go do whatever you want to do with yourself. So, and they love it. It's great.
Well, you live in your values there, right? These are connected to the values that you espouse, right? And I think that real life manifestation and see through that stuff. So that's important. That's what makes the connection with people. That's when they become more than words on a wall. That's when these things really start to take root. I mean, that's a great example of how you bring this stuff to life. I mean, when I listen to you talk about enlightened leadership, it feels like I think you used the word sort of meld. It feels like a meld of servant leadership, transformational leadership, the authentic leadership boost about just being your true self and remaining to that. And it even has those bits of, I guess, coming from the agile leadership world where there's little bits of, responding to the market. And if ever we had to respond to a market, right now is the time, right? With all these changes that you've talked about. What else do you see going on out there with CEOs who are really on top of this, Rajeev? How are they practically bringing this kind of enlightened leadership to life?
Yeah, so I'm a member of YPO, which is the Young Presidents Organization. I'm sure you've heard of it, and some of your listeners may have heard of it as well. And so I speak to like CEOs, and I just with a whole bunch of them yesterday evening, about 30 or 40 of them. I was talking to a few of them, and they all recognize that the world around them is changing. I think the biggest challenge is that some of them are really trying to fight it. Right?
Why do you think that? Why do you think that is? Why are they fighting against it?
I'll give you an example. So the return to office, right?
Great example. Yeah.
So Elon Musk came out and said, I think, what did he say? Like you have to find the quote, I guess, maybe in the edit, which is he came along something and said that working from home is the work of the devil or something like that. He said something crazy like it was yesterday or day before, or whatever. I'm like, all right, whatever. So a lot of times I've now discovered Elon Musk is just going to say things to get eyeballs on Twitter because he spent $44 billion on Twitter when the next closest bid was zero. And so, but I think what's happening is CEOs feel like they lose control when there's massive work from home, right? Are the people doing their work? Are they doing side hustles? What am I paying for?
Yeah.
So that to me is an issue of not measuring the right things. That to me is the sign of a poor culture because, if you have a great management team and you have the right structures in place, the beauty of working from home for employees is massive. Look, I'm not in a very sexy space. It's not like, I'm not. I mean, we're like an old 20-year-old cobbled together private equity business, right? And so, Andy, I'll tell you, I mean, it's not a sexy, whatever, right? What's 1105 media, right? It's like, okay, but we do a great job of what we do.
Right.
And, and my employees know that they know that my number one customer is them. And do I care if the job gets done at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m.? No, not really. I mean, as long as the job gets done, right? And what's happened, I think, is that the feedback I get from my employees, like from the women on my team, is that, I don't have to spend an hour and a half every morning getting up, putting on makeup, doing all these things, rushing the kids, rushing myself, feeling lost, and just it's so stressed in the morning, spending an hour in traffic driving, whatever the case might be. And so I'm giving back some of their life and some of their time, right? And they love that. And our attrition rates are through the floor ever since we have done this. And this is in the middle of the Great Resignation. And so, our attrition rates right now are less than 2%. And so that's
great.
That's pretty amazing. And so my hats off to my team and for all their hard work in that space. But I just think as we talk about how sometimes employees get worried about change, so do CEOs. And change is not easy, and I think some of them are trying to fight it, and they should find ways to embrace it. Yeah, there might be certain tasks and duties that you got to have people face to face. Look, my finance team likes to come into an office. Okay, go to an office.
Yeah,
but they have the flexibility of working from home if they want to. I mean, I don't make them come into the office.
Sure.
And so, it's I think I was with somebody over the weekend, over this past weekend up in Silicon Valley, over at NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is like, yeah, do whatever you want to do, right? Disney came out and said no, 3 to 4 days a week in the office, and so every company's a bit different. And from a Disney standpoint, I could probably see why it's important, right? Because you get so many moving parts, and
Yeah.
the theme park team has to talk to the movie guys, and movie guys have to talk to whatever, right? And so, I can definitely see why some of that stuff matters to certain people, but I think the more flexible you are, the better you're going to be in this world.
I think the flexibility is clearly something, and you talk about the generational shift, and maybe even the gender shift that you've got in the US. I mean, I think we're probably closer to 53% female mix. So we've almost got the opposite to what you guys have got in terms of the numbers. But I think some of the problems with the back to work thing is that it's been described as a bit of a hot mess over here because we've got so many different variants of it, and I think employers are just looking for some clarity. And I think where some businesses are struggling, they haven't got some of the fundamentals that you talked about solidly in place. So the collaboration that's expected when people come back together doesn't happen because not everybody's on the same sort of page. Some people are coming back into the office to do the admin they could be doing from home as opposed to doing the working collaboration stuff. So I think we're still, certainly in the UK, in a lot of cases, still trying to find our way. I'm just interested in that statement that you made about some CEOs still kind of fighting against some of the flow of the changes that we're going to need to make.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's inevitable, right? I mean, it's just you can't stop demographic change. People get old, and people retire, and boomers are retiring in droves, and Gen Xers are getting older now. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer. I'm 55, and in the next 10 to 12 years, people my age and kind of that Gen X generation is going to starting to retire, and millennials and Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to be the majority of the workforce, and they've grown up and in a very connected world. And what our parents used to say about us, we're now saying about this younger generation, right? They said we were the most connected. Well, we're not. It's actually going to millennials were the most connected. They're not. It's going to be every demographic change gets more technologically advanced, and so 30 years from now, I can only imagine what my sons are going to be saying to their kids about, boy, when I was your age, all I had was an iPhone 15. You know what I mean? So you know what I mean. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, and and I for one just believe that this is a natural evolution of humanity and of the workforce, and you have to you have to embrace this change.
Yeah,
you just have to.
And this meld of culture and tech is one of the key principles behind this set of change, right? Not leaving the culture stuff behind. That perhaps, I mean, I'm maybe biased because I work in that space and I get a bit frustrated with the whole. We'll get to the culture stuff when we've sorted out all the performance, and that's just madness to me because it's the culture stuff that will sort the performance. But I think that any more than now, this need to blend a real focus on tech and enabling tech, whether it's AI or whatever it is, and getting the workforce up with that, but also really doubling down on the culture stuff, really, getting that stuff sorted.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, Deloitte came out a few years ago and they surveyed CEOs around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And the survey said, essentially, it asked them, how important is culture to your organization? 90% of CEOs said very important. And then the follow-up question was, how many of you are actually going to do anything about it, essentially? And only 10% said they were going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Some of those were lying.
And I think the mistake CEOs make is I think when they hear the word culture in an organization, I think they hear expense.
And loss of control and some big stuff as well, right?
Well, I think they hear about, I got to give bonuses, I got to do trips, I got to do birthday celebrations, I got to, whatever it might be, right? And so I think they're expense. And I'm like, and I kind of scratch my head and I'm like, don't you understand that the bigger expense is going to be if your attrition rates are high, replacing those employees, bringing on new people, spending the money to train them up. I mean, it costs thousands of dollars to
100%.
train a new employee,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so that dwarfs, $500 bonus or running recognition events and whatever the case might be. So here at 1105, we do monthly town halls in our different business unit divisions. We do quarterly recognition events where we talk about the top performers through each group, and so we try to over communicate when we can. And so, are we perfect? No, but we try. We definitely try.
Well, I think it's incredibly important, as is, I think, because I think that is where one of the major foundations of any successful business comes between leadership and the employees is that trust factor, right? And for you, in your whole enlightened leadership piece, what's the influence of trust on that? Is there really still strong link on that sort of stuff? Are you as a stronger believer in that trust factor as I am? And how would you talk about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when you read the book and you talk about enlightened leadership, there are 5 pillars of enlightened leadership.
Right.
The first one is gratitude, practicing gratitude every day. Now, the reason why that's, it's just interesting, Satya Nadella, the now not new CEO of Microsoft, the guy that took over for Steve Ballmer, when he got the job, one of the bases he got the job was a major push and focus on gratitude.
Okay.
And he talks about it quite a bit. And he turned Microsoft around by focusing on gratitude. And he's turned Microsoft now from being like the evil company to opening up to partnering people. And now Google is kind of the evil company, right? And so it's interesting how Microsoft made that change. And so gratitude is the first pillar. Having resilience, right? I think COVID and the shutdowns and and how can you become mentally resilient, physically resilient? How you become resilient in your organization is number 2, right? How you measure what matters, the whole fall down 7, get up 8 type thing, right? And the third one is empathy. Now, it's interesting. Empathy is so important because, when you have, situations out there where, so when we grew up, like one of the pillars of servant leadership is if you want to go talk to your boss, you have to have 3 solutions to go talk to your boss, right? Or don't waste their time. Enlightened leadership says, look, yes, that would be nice, but you're the CEO for a reason, or you're leading your team for a reason. Maybe your employee is stuck. Maybe your employee just needs to talk. Maybe your employee just needs to bounce some ideas off of. Maybe your employee is really grappling with a problem, but they're afraid to come and talk to you because they don't have 3 solutions. Maybe they only have 1 or 2 solutions. And trying to break that down to say, look, come and speak to me no matter what the case might be, and I'll listen. Let's see what we can do to help you together. Right?
Yeah.
The 4th is accountability, right? So you still have to be accountable. You still got to do what you said you're going to do, right? That's still important. And the 5th is transparency. And some people say, well, why is there trust? And I said, and when you're running an organization, what you have to do is first be transparent with where you want to go, what you want to do before you can build that trust. So like, for example, during COVID, right, we had to do layoffs, pay cuts, and all those different types of things in the business. But I knew in order for them to trust me with where we needed to go, I first needed to be very transparent with them in the organization to tell them what was happening, what we were doing, and why we were doing it. So to me, whereas trust is so important in that organization, transparency needs to come first before trust.
I get that.
So so those are those 5 pillars: gratitude, resilience, empathy, accountability, and transparency. And if you take the first letter from those 5 words, it spells great, hence the title of the book, Chase Greatness.
Love that. I do love a mnemonic. I can't get away from the fact I do love one of those because my brain isn't clever enough to remember everything individually. I think that transparency thing is interesting though, because the link to clarity of vision and then seeing through on that promise I mean, that to me is the sort of meld, again, to overuse that word, between transparency. This is where we're going. This is how tough it's going to be. This is what I'm going to need. But by the way, this is what we're doing. And then you go and deliver those things. That's when trust really starts to come through. I mean, that's
Right.
incredibly strong. I want to just touch on something you mentioned earlier, and it gets talked about a lot today, about some people call it whole person growth, or seeing the whole person at work. And you talked about, outside the walls, looking after your people. I think this gets quite confused at times, and maybe a bit overplayed or misunderstood. When you're talking about enlightened leadership, kind of going beyond the realm of work and supporting personal development outside of work, how far does that go for you? What are there boundaries to that, or is it just whatever's needed is what you give? Because I think this is where people kind of get a bit misconstrued with it all.
Yeah, so it's interesting, so we've actually been practicing this now for the last couple of years, right?
Okay.
For obvious reasons.
Yep.
And I'll be honest with you, I think I can count on one hand the number of times employees have reached out for some help outside the walls of the business.
Mm-hmm.
I think they know it's there, they know it's possible, but it's also it takes two to party, it takes two to tango, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so there was some concern initially that that's what would happen, that people are going to start reaching out for all kinds of things. But I think what you see here at the end of the day is that just human nature is that people want to try to solve their issues themselves and deal with whatever they're dealing with themselves and try to compartmentalize things, right? And so, but they do know that there's somewhat of a safety net here to help catch them in case they need some help, in case they feel like they need some more support outside the walls of the business. And, it's up to them to use it. It's just like any sort of benefit a company has to offer. If you look at benefit plans companies have, a lot of benefits don't get used. So to me, it's like, it's a great umbrella to say, hey guys, it's here. It's happy to help you and whatever you need. And, just let us know, so it's not like, and we're not, I or the management team, we're not like calling people at 9:00 at night saying, hey, what'd you have for dinner? Right? No, it's all about, hey, if you need some help, if you need anything, let us know.
I think when I look at this stuff and when I talk to people about it, I think, really, really focusing in on a few meaningful things, right? Rather than a whole bunch of gimmicks, whether it's, take as much time off as you like or do this, the other, or what. I think focusing on where and listening to where real support could be needed, whether that's mental stuff or financial advice or whatever it might be, really kind of doubling down on those things is where this stuff can really, really have benefit. And I think when you try and load it with gimmicks, it doesn't work.
Right, absolutely, 100% correct. And I think employees see through the gimmick. So I'll give you small examples of something that just happened the other day. So there's a member of my team, and he and his daughter were so stressed out because they needed to go fly, and they just needed to go and visit college campuses, universities, because she has to make a decision. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, dude, don't worry about it. Take your laptop with you. You can work from wherever you are.
Yeah.
It's fine. If you're working from these places, feel free to expense your meals in your hotel and all that stuff because you're going to be working, and that's fine. And that one small act reduced his stress load by a factor of 10, and allowed him to spend meaningful time with his daughter, to go out there and find the right college university that she wanted to go to, right? And that matters. I think, if this was 3 years ago or 4 years ago, it would be like, okay, well, so submit your PTO and go and go have a good trip, and we'll talk to you when you get back, right? But now he feels like he could go, he can get his work done, support his daughter, doesn't have to come back to 500 emails and things backed up, and he can, and he feels supported. And those are the things that build loyalty in an organization.
That's a great example. Someone feels seen, they feel that they're going to be engaged, they're going to be more productive, they're going to be more loyal. Everybody kind of wins out of it. Everybody's in a happier space, right? I think that's a great piece. Rajeev, we are vastly running out of time. I know I can't keep you much longer, but I had this thing on the show called Sticky Notes, my friend, where we're trying to summarize all the massive amounts of sagely learning that you could have imparted on us today. on what we could fit on 3 sticky notes. So if we're thinking about helping people really get their head around enlightened leadership, what 3 pieces of advice would you leave on your 3 sticky notes, my friend?
So I think the first one is treat your employees as your number one internal customer. And, as your number one customer, rather. Your internal customer is your number one customer, right? So that's number one.
Yeah.
I think that the second one is, never be the smartest person in the room. And that's one really important distinction in enlightened leadership, right? And you've heard that before, but I think that's really important because when you're the smartest person in the room, people defer to you and you never hear really good ideas.
So true.
And even if you are the smartest person in the room, pretend you're not, right? And then I think the third one, which gets lost, is the one that we kind of started this whole enlightened leadership discussion around, which is, man, find a way to practice gratitude every day. Like today's Friday, and my team, every Friday, my leadership team sends me little snippets that we then put into a little newsletter that goes out called Twiggin, This Week in Good News. And we end the week always on gratitude and some good news. There might be other challenges and problems, but I want them to feel like they're mentally fresh going to the weekend so they can spend time with their family and friends, whatever the case might be. And I tell them that whatever problem they're dealing with at 2:00 in the afternoon on Friday is not going to get solved over the weekend. So go home and, or not go home. You're already probably at home, but you know what I mean, right? And then it'll still be there at 8:00 in the morning or 9:00 in the morning on Monday. So no need to stress on it. So we talk about these things, and I think those are 3 really important things that I think people are need to embrace. And if I could add a fourth one, which is embrace this change that's coming. Start to learn some of these tools, start to learn what's happening in the world with all this AI stuff, and don't be afraid of it. Learn it.
I love that. We will definitely add a 4th sticky note to your pile on the Instagram channel, my friend. I appreciate that immensely. And actually, a genuinely massive gratitude for you coming on the podcast today. I've loved listening to what you've got to say. I think this is exactly where we're headed and what we needed. So thank you ever so much for coming on, Rajeev. Great stuff.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. It's an honor to be here, and thank you all for listening.
Okay, everyone. That was Rajeev Kapur. And if you'd like to find out a little bit more about him or any of the things that we've talked about today, please check out the show notes. So, that concludes today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it, found it interesting, and heard something maybe that will help you become a stickier, more successful business from the inside going forwards. If you have, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps. I'm Andy Goram, and you've been listening to the Sticky from the Inside podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening.